Rolex's secondary market just revealed something unexpected. In May of 2026, Bob's Watches closed the books on 6 months of secondary market transactions and found that the watch gaining the most value in the entire Rolex catalog wasn't a Daytona. It wasn't a Submariner. It was the datejust 31, reference 6827, a watch most collectors would call entry-level. It rose 68% in 5 months. For anyone treating luxury watch investment as a serious discipline, that number changes the conversation entirely. Submariner, GMT Master 2, Daytona, and Date, just references make up the bulk of pre-owned watch transactions worldwide. So a shift inside that group changes more than one collector's portfolio. It moves the center of gravity for the whole secondary market. For 2 decades, the assumption inside this hobby has held steady. Steel sports watches were the safe place to put money, and everything else was a hobby purchase. The 2026 numbers don't support that anymore. Take the Daytona in steel, reference 116500LN. The Daytona runs Rolex's caliber 4130 chronograph movement, a manufacturer caliber that commands serious collector respect. At its 2022 peak, that watch traded above $50,000 on the secondary market. By the middle of this year, it sits in the mid-30,000s. A gray market dealer who bought one wholesale for $38,000 in late 2022 is now watching that same reference trade around $32,000. $6,000 gone, before overhead, before storage. The Submariner tells a similar story from the other direction. The current steel Submariner, reference 124060, powered by the caliber 3235, retails for around $7,400 after this year's price increases. A 2 to 3 year old unworn example trades for $6,200 to $6,800 on the secondary market. A buyer with cash in hand has no reason to wait on an allocation when the used one costs less. The reason for this isn't a change in taste, even though it gets described that way. Rolex's Freiburg facility, a temporary plant built to expand production, came online, and supply increased right as demand cooled, weighed down by tariff concerns out of the United States, and a broader retreat from the idea that a watch is an investment. Pre-owned programs run directly by Rolex's Certified Pre-Owned Initiative and Audemars Piguet have only added to the pressure, professionalizing the secondary trade and squeezing the gray market premiums dealers used to count on. The Rolex CPO program, launched in 2022 and now available through authorized dealers globally, moved the certification and authentication business away from independent platforms and back toward the brand itself. Inventory piled up. By early 2024, one major metropolitan dealer was carrying $400,000 in steel sports inventory, and by this year, that same inventory marked down to $280,000. A 30% paper loss, sitting on a shelf waiting for a buyer. That inventory wasn't unusual. It was Daytonas, Submariners, GMT Masters, Sea Dwellers, the entire steel sports lineup carrying the same correction, just at different speeds. The number worth holding on to is the scale of what sits underneath all of this. The global luxury watch market runs to roughly $50 billion this year, with pre-owned sales alone last counted at $22 billion. Platforms like Chrono 24 and Watchbox report transaction volumes that now rival the traditional gray market dealer network, with Chrono 24 alone listing over 500,000 watches at any given time. Geneva, New York, Hong Kong, and Dubai all reported busier years than the one before, and Phillips and Christie's are reporting their strongest Geneva and New York sales in 3 years. None of that scale explains why one steel sports watch is losing money, while a watch a third its price is gaining it. The story is happening underneath the headline number, not inside it. And yet, by most broader measures, 2026 is being described as the year the watch market healed. The Bloomberg Subdial Index, which tracks the 50 most traded watches by transaction value, gained 8% in 2025, lifted in part by demand for dress watches. Add the watch charts figures, 300 watches across the top 10 brands, up more than 10% over the past year, and Morgan Stanley's report of secondary prices rising for 3 straight quarters. The first time since 2022 that value retention improved across every brand they track, and the recovery looks complete from a distance. Coverage from Hodinkee and the broader watch media tracked this shift closely throughout 2025, and the consensus coming out of Watches and Wonders Geneva this year largely confirmed it. Look closer at who's doing the rising, though, and the picture sharpens. Patek Philippe's index climbed 18% over the year, while Cartier and Audemar's Piguet gained 9% and 5% respectively. Tudor and Vacheron Constantin have led the relative strength tables too, picking up collector attention as the headline Trinity references plateau at the very top. Independent makers like F.P. Journe and D. Bethune have widened their own collector base across the same stretch, with waitlist depth now approaching what the mainstream Swiss houses see. The recovery is real. It just isn't happening where the headlines say it is, and it isn't happening evenly inside Rolex's own catalog either. The Datejust 31 isn't alone. The wider Lady Datejust collection is up nearly 23% this year, climbing from around $9,200 to just over $11,300. 2 references inside that collection, the 6917 and the 17917 gained between 32% and 39% on their own. What connects these watches has less to do with the Rolex name and more to do with size. Bob's Watches data, comparing December of last year to May of this year, shows the smaller cased references, the 26, 31, 34, and 36 millimeter pieces, dramatically outperforming their larger counterparts. The pattern isn't limited to Rolex either. The 35 millimeter Patek Philippe Nautilus, reference 7118, has risen 52% in 2 years, compared to 27% for the larger 40 millimeter reference 5711. The market has moved toward comfort and proportion, away from the look-at-me wrist presence that defined the last decade. The discontinued Day Date 2 climbed nearly 20% this year to just under $46,000, while the current Day Date 40 followed close behind, up nearly 15% to around $55,500. The Explorer 40, one of Rolex's newer tool watch references, gained almost 16%, settling near $10,600. Then there's the Pepsi. Rolex discontinued the red and blue GMT Master 2 earlier this year, and the effect has moved through the rest of the GMT family quietly. With no Coke bezel left to absorb demand, buyers who can't find a Pepsi are turning to the Batman and the Batgirl instead, and prices on both have started climbing. The Pepsi itself, trading around $25,000 now, is on a path some dealers expect to clear $30,000 by year end. One discontinued reference, and the entire GMT lineup feels it. None of this is being driven by Rolex's own pricing decisions, even though it looks that way from the outside. The company raised prices twice this year. The January increase ran 4% to 9% across the catalog, and the June increase touched only gold and two-tone models, leaving steel completely untouched. That second increase wasn't a strategy shift. It came after gold hit an all-time high of $5,589 an ounce in January, the kind of number that forces a watchmaker's hand, regardless of what the brand wants the conversation to be about. The collectors who do well in this market share a few habits that mattered less during the speculative years. They specialize instead of spreading across categories, and they build relationships with 2 or 3 authorized dealers and an auction specialist over years, rather than chasing the lowest price on Chrono 24 or anywhere else online. They request brand archive extracts on high-value vintage pieces, and they treat box and papers, original components, and verifiable service history as load-bearing decisions, not nice-to-haves. The dealer with the steel sports inventory is still holding it, still carrying the 30% loss on the books, still waiting for a buyer who hasn't shown up yet, A few miles away, in a case most collectors walk past without stopping, the Datejust 31 sits quietly, doing exactly what nobody expected it to do this year.